Hi, I'm Dr. David Croto, Dean of the Seminary and School of Ministry at Columbia International University, and I am here with Dr. Mike Naylor, Professor of Bible. Dr. Naylor, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, glad to be with you.
Why do people avoid studying the book of Revelation?
I think there's a lot of different reasons. For some, it's a matter of kind of feeling intimidated. There's kind of strange imagery and kind of unfamiliar ground. You go to the Gospels, okay, we're talking about Jesus' life and ministry. You go to Paul's letters, okay, we're talking about the church. We get to Revelation, we're talking about dragons and locusts and things that way. So sometimes it's just kind of feeling intimidated by that. Another reason I think a lot of people avoid it is, I don't know if you've ever had this experience before, but getting in a fight over something in the book of Revelation. So how do you interpret this? And I was in a church small group one time, and the topic of discussion shifted to the book of Revelation, and the small group leader very quickly said, "Oh, we're not going to go there right now." And you got the sense that something's happened before in that. You end up seeing a lot of cult leaders that appeal to Revelation as trying to be the source of their authority. What appears to be in some cases a dismal book. You have a lot of plagues, you have judgments, you have scary creatures, and as one New Testament scholar wrote, "Happy people do not write apocalypses." So I'm not sure what that says about those that study them, but I think there's a lot of reasons that people end up avoiding the book.
So we're talking about the book of Revelation, and one thing that really annoys me is when people call it the book of Revelations.
Yes.
Why is it wrong to call it the book of Revelations?
For one, the title of the book that appears in the very first line, where we get the language of the apocalypse, it is a singular revelation. It's not a series of visions, but it seems as we take a look at this book, it is written as a unified whole, and it was what God revealed to John to reveal to the seven churches. So it's not a bunch of different revelations, it's one revelation.
So if this is something that God gave to John to reveal to the churches, then why are there so many wacky views on this book?
In some cases, the lack of exposure and good teaching on the book can end up resulting in just kind of being a playground for wild and uncontrolled speculation. And I think one of the issues with that is that for many, they want the book to be relevant. And so instead of looking to see what John is trying to communicate to the believers in his day so that we can follow Jesus in the same way in our day, a lot will look to things in the news and say, well, maybe that's the mark of the beast, or maybe that's a sign of the end times, and in hopes of trying to make a book that really is designed to be very relevant for us, to try to make it relevant in some unique way. Beyond that, there are just a lot of wacky views that are out there, and Revelation just seems to attract them.
Give me one.
Well, let me think. In kind of recent times with COVID, that's been a big thing, and I've had
COVID's in the book of Revelation?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
But with the COVID pandemic, most recently here, there were a number of people that began thinking that either perhaps the disease itself or the vaccine, perhaps that's the mark of the beast. And there was a lot of fear. I had people that had contacted me directly asking me questions about whether or not they were going to take the mark of the beast if they took the COVID vaccine, or and some just kind of out of, wow, this would be really interesting if this was the case. Others, there was a lot of fear involved that they're going to accidentally be unfaithful to Jesus and be under God's judgment. And so there's a number of things that were posted about masks and vaccines and things like that.
Well, then how can we interpret and apply this book well in our context today?
Yeah, well, I think it takes some effort to make sure that we're studying the text well. We have to pay attention to references from the Old Testament and ways that John connects, and they are all over the place in the book of Revelation. As John makes connections back to the Pentateuch in the Old Testament, there's a lot of imagery from Exodus in the book, prophets such as Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, imagery from Psalms. There's a lot of connections with the Old Testament. So we have to pay attention to that because he's trying to tell us important things about God's rule over creation, God's righteousness and justice. We also have to pay attention to what the book would have meant to the first century readers. That John wasn't time transported to the future where he saw here remarkable things that he just couldn't figure out how to describe. But John was writing to readers in the first century that were navigating, what does it mean to be faithful to Jesus? Is God really in control of history? What about his promises for the future? How will that come to pass? And so it's very important for us to pay attention to how John was connecting with his first century audience. And same way we do with the letters of Paul, to understand how Paul was calling these believers in his letters to faithfulness to Jesus. Well, how is John calling us to that as well, even as we look toward the future?
Well, John tells us, blessed are those who read the words of this book and obey it. And it's an unfortunate reality that this book has been neglected by so many. So thanks for helping us to understand how to approach this book and the importance of approaching this book.
Gladly.